This is cyber security and software development. What does it mean? It's a very broad title without a lot of meaning, so I get to make it up. Uh, I'll go ahead and give the bottom line up front because that's how I'm used to things. Um, it is a message of hope uh, that hard skills are always useful. They're either in demand now or they will be soon because every time hard skills are kind of ignored because a new technology makes life easier, people kind of forget that you actually do need to think through things. So uh, it is a message of hope to be hopeful. I will share some anecdotes of incredibly shitty software, uh, exploitable, slow, and unnecessary. And has AI improved that issue? No. Um, that's the simple answer. The longer answer, which I don't really think is an answer, is I've noticed really smart people using it a lot more, and they've produced code as bad, if not worse, than some of the worst devs I worked with. So that's one data point, but that's been my experience. Um, so I do want it to be a message of hope. Who am I? Well, short, husband, father, developer, tech lead, and incredibly lucky. So I first was introduced to hacking in high school in 2002. I had a friend who introduced me, and we ended up doing blaster worm patches throughout the high school, which is awesome because I got the days off, just patching all the lab computers. Uh, then I went to college. Um, I started in computer science. Uh, I was working on a fun website. This was about the time torrent had come out, and as you can imagine, a lot of universities had blocked it. So we were working on a fun website to share personal files like media. Certainly nothing proprietary, but it would break those up and automate some of the process since so basically to get around torrent blocks. So the friend I was running the website with, he ended up disappearing for a couple weeks, and was on the FBI's most wanted the next time I saw him. Uh, Basically, he had written some brute force code that was used by someone else to bankrupt a bunch of companies, steal millions of dollars. For his trouble, he was paid 10 grand. And I decided I wanted to move away from that and just focus on development. Um, I worked on e-commerce a lot. That's kind of where I first noticed security issues that the business would say weren't security issues. Uh, and it wasn't super fulfilling. So I ended up taking a job that I thought would be a bit more meaningful and ended up kind of working in cyber uh, tangentially for DoD. And I didn't know what a CTF was until I joined that company. And I was like, wow, people get paid for this now. Um, you know, I've talked with at least four other people here who have a similar background where they were kind of forced out of hacking because um, it could get you in a lot of trouble very easily. So I've got my contacts. They'll also be at the end in case anyone wants to hit me up. The talk overview, I like to kind of break it into three things. So the first is uh, level setting is really what I focus on. Um, Defining skills because there's a lot of ambiguity in this field. And then what that really means, and more than anything, is kind of sharing my journey and discovery uh, and things that I wish someone had told me maybe 20 years ago. Excuse me. All right. So, like I kind of said, uh, with level setting, terminology changes depending on the person, depending on the context, and you will see the same word, acronym, whatever used in 20 different ways in your career. It's kind of annoying, but I've got two multiple choice questions and there will be a test. So please pay attention. All right. So, what is a developer? Uh, the choices are, an invoker of arcane magics, just a copy pasta script kiddie, or C, a normal person with moments of brilliance and moments of stupidity, navigating a very complicated world of competing and sometimes conflicting goals. Uh, that the conflicting is really kind of what I wanted to share because um, your 0 day could be someone else's profit. So sometimes security takes a backdoor because you can't really break user flow or authentication willy nilly without business getting involved. So pen tester, I am not a pen tester, so pen testers can correct me on this. Uh, Black Hoodie and an attitude, another script kiddie, but with access to NSA payloads, um, kind of just running uh, kernel exploits and stuff like that. Or C, the same definition. Um, okay, so it's also C. That's the answer. Uh, so I kind of wanted to um, point out, I guess, uh, the differences because I think for a long time I thought uh, there was a linear progression to someone's skill set. And I have learned that that is very not true, both in others and myself. So the big difference, I think, with maybe a pen tester versus a developer is their mission, obviously. But what people don't think about sometimes is the timeline and the scope. Um, I've had devs arguing with people that didn't understand STIG controls and were saying something was an issue because they checked the box for Java instead of JavaScript and they didn't know the difference. I've also had developers write CRF exempt uh, decorators over all their functions and wonder how that could be an issue. Um, so I guess the big thing is devs usually focus on one or two languages. They're they try to master those over a career. Lots of time and iteration goes into a project. Um, and kind of the idea behind extreme programming, if anyone's familiar with that term, is it was like, hey, what if we had infinite time? We would write tests. We would really, uh, but yeah, I mean, it took off for a while. It's obviously been replaced with more things like agile, whatever the agile coaches are selling that year. Um, there is nothing more extreme when you drop the e because it was extreme. Uh, so I haven't worked with all pen testers, but the ones I have worked with were very different. They kind of knew Python, kind of knew Ruby, kind of knew JavaScript, and it was just like they had a huge gamut of knowledge. Um, they weren't experts by any means in a language. I'd be like, hey, you could maybe use 2 lines of code instead of 20. But incredibly smart people, or C, if you'll recall. So that's kind of what I've noticed is the big difference in priorities. And again, kind of level setting. That this is probably obvious, but they're not all the same. So you've got these developers that just make MVPs or pen testers that just run a Nessus scan, and it obviously gets much more complicated. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants, so there's been a lot of iterations, a lot of changes. Um, it's just a complicated field, I guess, and we're constantly learning better ways to do things. So it kind of brings me to my next point and skilling up. All right, so I touched on it a little bit where I thought it was linear. Um, we are complicated and multivariate. Uh, I've learned that they are easily perishable. I mean, I see it myself. If I spend a week writing JavaScript, Python is like, haven't I done this like a decade? I should be better at this. And they're multimodal. It's always interesting to me how knowing something like a rendering pipeline will inform your decision for any other ETL transformation. It's like you have these building blocks, and sometimes you forget things, and you have different things on your mind. So it's you really have to exercise things to be good at them, even if you were good at them at some point. So this is a little exciting. This is production code for a Fortune 500 company. Um, it's no longer there, but yes, this is the type of code um, that I've seen by really, really good programmers. I think if anyone's good in crypto, the flaw is probably obvious. AES mode CBC uh, known to be exploitable. For anyone that's maybe got some insider baseball into e-commerce, you probably recognize WCS. It's IBM's web commerce sphere. So this is an integration. IBM did not use Python to write that. So it was kind of a limitation of the encryption available for legacy systems. So simple fix, right? Jira issue gets created. We're going to change our algorithm. So we're going to use this Fernet symmetric encryption algo. Well, that's great. This is what the final code looked like. And I love this pattern. Uh, and I know I'm not the one that's coined it, but it's essentially exploitable at all costs. You've got a try except, it tries to decrypt. Oh, that failed because they didn't use this algorithm. Well, let's go back to the last one, all the way trickling up to the broken AES. So, uh, yay, this is an obvious exploit. Everyone would recognize it that had like any kind of crypto know-how when it was written. So, uh, why did it not get address? Um, well, competing priorities. Uh, we added that. Um, we decided we were going to change it, and then enter the business. So they had a mobile application, which kind of relied on the old encryption, and they had it calculated with their KPIs or whatever these project managers love, um, that we would lose X amount of dollars if we broke encryption, and it logged out so many people that they had to go log into their website again. Like that was a trade-off that was considered. Uh, and they eventually fixed it, so uh, no knock against them. This is a bit more recent. This isn't security, but if anyone's worked with Python or an ORM, so this was Django Ninja code, and this was written somewhat recently, that I spotted, and I was like, where did this come from? Uh, Great programmer. They were using Copilot though, and the issue is so it's using the ORM when it gets B set. I redacted. We're not running code just saying set or whatever. But those those were the object names and the instance names. It's lowercase. So what they were doing is they were doing a for loop in Python to join, do two separate joins to get a key from a column from a separate table. So it worked. It only took 2,000 milliseconds running across a kind of trivial amount of data, and then we were hooking up to 2 million rows. And this is the fix. So in Django's ORM, you can just do a dot exclude. It might be hard to tell. Uh, my code highlighting wasn't working for this, so it's just plain text. But there's a double underscore, which is how you do a join in the ORM. So instead of doing all that loop, you just change it and have it done in SQL, and obviously that's a lot faster than Python. So I misspoke. That was actually a 20,000 millisecond request when we did use the production data. Uh, so I kind of want to circle back to skills and what I've heard numerous times, and it's a little misleading because, like I said, it implies linear growth. And we talk about T-shaped developers all the time. I haven't really heard it in an infosec, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's used in circles there as well. And this is kind of how I segment it: is you've got the x-axis, so your broad skills like hey, that dev is really good at Python, sucks at Java, solid on the command line. So they've got that command line horizontal access. They know their tooling. They're also good at specializing in their language. But again, like pen testers are, they have to be so much broader. They have to be generalist based on the customer. Um, so it kind of, your career gives you an advantage on developing those skills on someone else's dime, essentially. Uh, and that's all well and good, but I mean, what does this really mean for me? And this is the advice I wish I'd heard 20 years ago. And I really hope everyone at some point in their life gets to experience this feeling. You think something is exhaustively boring. For me, it was networking. I was like, this is so OSI model. I don't care. I just want to write code. And then 15 years later, I'm deep diving into like, oh, that's really cool how that works. And I hope everyone else kind of has that experience where you go deep, like exhaustively deep into a subject that bored the heck out of you. Um, and I didn't really expect that, that I would have any joy in networking. But um, like I said, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, and we're not smarter than the coders in the 70s as much as we like to maybe give ourselves credit for. Um, some other examples, this is just kind of like spitballing on recent uh, laughable. I wouldn't say incompetence. It's laughable organizational incompetence where we as a society just let stuff fall through the cracks. So, um, Mozilla, incredible developers, very solid on web technologies. They're innovating. They're writing the RFCs, and I remember implementing WebSockets when they just came out. And I had to jump on a call with like 20 people and be like, this is what the docs say. You are correct. This is how it actually works. Because it was completely wrong. And it was, yeah, for anyone familiar with the Mozilla um, documentation, it is kind of like the book of law when it comes to web development. That's what, these RFCs are figured out, and then the browsers implement the details. And I was like, wow, this is wrong. And so one of the things I've kind of thought about a lot with the surge of AI is how it kind of trivializes some things. And I go back to like people say reasoning. They're not reasoning. They're not reasoning. They are predicting based on input, which is a stark difference. So like if you ask me to break something down, I'm not walking you through that process. I'm referencing someone else that walked through that process and regurgitating what they said. There is statistical noise because you don't want to just like overfit and stuff. But we have documentation like that is infallible at times. I just described how documentation can fail. It doesn't describe how the functions actually work. I think we've gotten a little better with like doxing code and all that. But if you're using a code editor, you have an index. It has every class in that module available. So I I don't know everyone else's experience, but I've used like Colab and I've seen just hallucinated method calls that don't exist, especially in frameworks. So it's stuff like that. I want to say it was either last year or the year before. Microsoft had like an MD5 hash for their HVAC, and it was like, how did that get out the gate? Ticketmaster, what happened with them recently? Someone found like a static API key, I believe, or the shared token that got exposed. So one of the things I've heard as well is, um, and I kind of walked through it with like web commerce sphere is backwards compatibility and integrating legacy systems because you're not just going to give up all your customer data and like like migrate it over. Sometimes it's in a basement, it works. It got hooked up to the internet, uh, but far later, just because we're like, okay, we're going to move to the cloud. So integrations are often a point of failure, especially with like depending on things that do things you normally wouldn't. So like Python, reading right into the file system, taking in image. I mean, especially with all the statistical analysis tools in Python. You can imagine there's quite a large surface area. Crosswalks are a common example in databases if anyone's worked as a sysadmin or DBA. And I guess the advice or vibes I would offer, um, don't vibe code. Uh, this isn't really hot takes, but I did preface that it is a bit ranty. So Python, um, I think I haven't met a pen tester that doesn't use it. I mean, I I can work in any domain, Bluetooth, embedded, web, any domain, and I know that there is a Python module that will do something very useful. I mean, especially like with CTS, like, oh, I'm reading a Bluetooth file, let me go look for a library. If you don't like learn some kind of scripting, it'll make your life easier. Uh, uh, Probably not Perl, but Ruby's okay. Bash is also uh, older than will last longer than any of us. C. Now this is really contentious, and I don't really mean like you gotta learn C, but and use it every day. But K&R is like not a long book. That's the famous C uh, book, and it's really big text. And I thought I knew how many um, uh, primitives C had or tokens, and it's not a huge amount. Like if you just learn C, it's simple, it's straightforward. What is incredibly complicated is architecture, computer architecture, and memory, and all the layers of abstraction we build around paging tables and canaries and obfuscation. Like it gets pretty complicated. But knowing the foundations like Python, where you can find a module and parse data a little easier, um, like really enables that learning and discovery of different protocols. But Python will not teach you the layouts of computer architecture like C will, especially because you can compile and you can see what you wrote and what it actually assembles to. And obviously, the Linux documentation, it's all C, so it's helpful if you plan on running anything on a server. Uh, it's very valuable to know C. So why? Why? There's there's just a lot of complexity. This is kind of the focus, and this is where I've seen like the disconnect, I guess. So uh, this goes back to the message of hope. Oh yeah, the Microsoft MD5, the earlier example. There's a bug very early in the days of Django where you didn't that you could just arbitrarily say like, hey, form factory on the back end, I want 1 million forms, and it would just like DOS the server. It's not a distributed, just like uh, out of memory, and crash the Python REPL. So there's tons of exploits. I I don't know if I believe this stat, but I've heard something like, oh, 90% of all 0 days are undiscovered. Uh, I don't know. I'm inclined to believe it when I've seen kind of the quality of software. I wouldn't even say degrade. It's always been bad. But maybe just the more I am able to understand it and grok it, uh, I'm a little more informed. Um, and the big takeaway on the industry side is security at all costs. It isn't realistic. I just mentioned like easily exploitable code that we knew about and we had justified to ourselves as an organization because of the business trade-offs. So, you know, anyone could have found that, submitted a bug bounty at the time. Um, all the developers knew about it. We're just kind of like told to ignore it. So there will always be exploitable software. I mean, as long as we live in this time, this society, if there will be prioritizations that uh, create new, fun, exciting bugs. And no IQ, if anyone's playing the RF, this is a very, the guy running that CTF is incredibly skilled and experienced. And he said it once, it is often a junction of disparate systems that vulnerabilities appear. And that's kind of uh, it was very poignant because I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Because the whole reason that exploit existed is we had to integrate, this not great IBM product. um, and my final advice is just kind of, uh, I'm about to be 40, but growing up over time, and losing the friends that I had in my hacking days and kind of reconnecting. Go local. So I've got a cool anecdote. A couple of the 2,600 people I ran into, and probably took like 6 months before we realized, like, Gene and Nate. I was like, I know you guys, and it was like 20 years ago. I met them at Interzone. So look out for your people. Conferences are obviously a great way to meet people. I don't know of any hacker spaces. I know there was one in Atlanta. Um, we should start those. There's one in Tampa. That's awesome. And then obviously the gamified platforms, Discord, like every CTF has a Discord. You join. There's usually like a looking for group channel. Um, it's really fun. And like I've joined a team where I didn't talk to anyone. I just hopped in a Discord voice chat and started streaming what I was doing. And it was more fun than if I just done it myself. So yeah, I know a lot of people, myself included, can be uh, not super social, but I think it's important to make an effort. It definitely improved the quality of my life. Finding old friends, making new ones, because um, it the work is fun at times, but there's always a not fun part of it. And I don't want to glorify hustle culture, but if you genuinely enjoy hacking, if you enjoy creating, if you enjoy figuring shit out, because it's hard. It's hard to think through some stuff by yourself, and you need peers to bounce ideas off of. Um, they're not gonna reach out to you. Meetup.com, that's a great website too. I've met some developer friends through that as well. Um, and I will open it up for questions because I think, yeah, I had planned for 30 minutes. I know we go till 7. I will open it for questions. I will keep talking otherwise about how great it is to meet locals and write code with them. Any questions? I was kidding. I'm not going to talk till 7. All right. Well, thank you for coming. I hope you learned something. Like I said, I wish someone had told me some of those things 20 years ago, because I was saying, one of these days we're going to get software perfect, and that has not happened yet. So, um, uh, find your people, find what sparks that interest. It's not always going to be the same thing. Like I said, be open to learning things. I probably shouldn't have ignored networking as long as I did because it felt like I was starting from ground zero uh, when I could have at least started at like, you know, a baseline knowledge of memorizing keywords or acronyms. But that's my info. Yeah, I hope everyone is having a good con. I will be around. Feel free to ask me questions. I'm very open about everything. So, all right. Thank you.